We're working it.
We are. All right, we're probably live now, Dave, because it always goes live like halfway through this loading bar.
Okay.
I have discovered. So don't say anything that you're going to regret.
Shit.
Yeah.
Live
Okay,
stream.
I'm going to turn that off.
I'm going to write live streaming
share.
the strain. That's gross, eh?
How can we make this as gross as possible? Yes.
We can do better than that.
Okay, that is the
Chat.
link there for you. I'll
Copy
go to
link. I like that all of this
Twitter.
setup is on the live stream. That's what you want. You want to give people the
this
full.
Is where we want to start, is basically us fumbling around with social media. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. But we have to tell the people. We have to tell, how many people did you say we have there, Dave?
13. Okay, hold on a second. Copy the link. What I should do to just show my age is just have like the camera like this, you know?
Yeah. But then you either have to be super close or super far away. There's no in between.
No, this computer's not that movable. Next time, if I use the laptop, I will keep it like here. Okay.
All right. So we have that. Boom, boom. Okay. This is
we
going to seem really weird to people watching if they have also not seen the movie, but I have an idea of how to start with our cold open.
I was like trying to remember what we were texting, and now I remember. It's so gross.
All right. So, all right. Are you ready? Are you recording?
I don't know if I'll ever be ready. Yeah, I have two lights, and it does say that it's recording my voice.
Okay, great. So this is how we're going to start. Dave, just look at it. Look at my buttocks.
Why did you did you wax? Did you wax it all?
Hey, there is like 12 unclaimed canisters of turtle wax in this compartment back here. Somebody has to use them. But I'm more so looking, is that a mole? What is that? What is that on my buttocks?
I don't even know how to respond to that. I don't want to look any deeper.
No one does. Again, they'll seem so random if people have not actually seen the movie we're talking about this week.
I feel like we should have just irradiated it.
Yeah. 5 levels down. Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. My name is Kyle.
I'm just embarrassed.
A podcast where a sentient machine was forcing us to watch movies in order to prevent it from initiating the apocalypse. And then another apocalypse happened. Somehow it's used its powers to transport us across time and space. So now we're on our way back to Earth. We do tend to talk about the ideas of the movie rather than the movie itself. And the machine still threatens our lives if we don't review the movies it asks us to. So today we're going to be talking about the film, The Andromeda Strain.
The Andromeda Strain.
Of course, we need to give a big thank you to our 2 patrons. This might be new for you, Dave. Our 2 patrons.
What?
We have Green Girl YYC, and the podcast It's a Conspiracy has also become our 2nd patron supporter over there. So if you want to join them, see the different write-ups that Dave works so very hard on, and also the bonus episodes that we post there once a month, then definitely you should go and check it out over there on our Patreon page.
Talk about February. What are we watching in February? To give them
we might find that out next week.
Oh, okay. Everything with you is a secret. It's hard working with this guy.
Literally, there is a document that you have access to that you could find out the answer right now.
And I'd have to read.
That's
Kyle.
Right. I think where we need to start here then, Dave, is 2 things. What is your history with Michael Crichton, and then this movie specifically?
So me and Michael, you know what? I was a big Michael Crichton. Crichton?
Yes.
Is that acceptable?
I've corrected
for you?
Your pronunciation a couple of times, yes.
So so I was a big Michael Crichton fan. I think clearly after Jurassic Park, but I started reading his books because I used to be illiterate. And I think from the library in high school, I got them all. So I've read Andromeda Strain, Sphere, Jurassic Park, just the whole, I can't even remember, as many as I could get. and I like them. I had a Tom Clancy phase, so what the fuck's
Oof.
wrong with me? Yeah.
I
But
mean, everyone goes through it. You don't have to be embarrassed by it. You know, all you want to do is be like a spy, and I don't
who doesn't
know,
want to be a spy or like a
become a
Jack
dad.
Ryan? Like a cool spy,
Yeah.
an unwilling spy. Nobody wants to be
You
Bond.
know, you hang out at airport bookstores and be like, "Am I going to read this?" And then you forget it on the plane. It's your Tom Clancy phase.
Actually, speaking of that, I had a Jack Reacher phase too.
Oh
So
boy. Oh
yeah,
boy.
airplane fiction, baby. Um, and then I think the 90s is a big Michael Crichton adaptation
Yes,
era.
I would say so. I have not tracked it, but it feels like the 90s was like the Michael Crichton decade where like
Yeah,
most of his stuff was adapted. If people don't know, he also developed the show ER. So
it's
like
crazy.
there was big
That,
in the
that's a
90s.
thing. I don't know if you heard of it, but it's
It
kind of
only
insane.
made George Clooney like the biggest star in the world, but
He's not even a doctor. Isn't that
I
crazy?
well, he is, but he never practiced medicine, is how I understand it. He
Oh,
went
like
to
he
medical
actually
school
studied?
and he
Oh,
graduated it, but he
oh.
never practiced medicine, is from what I
Ugh.
understand.
Him and Tom Hanks. There's no dirt. There's nothing.
Oh,
He
so
was going
sorry.
to be a doctor.
I thought we were still talking about Michael Crichton. If you're
Oh, Michael
talking
Crichton,
about
yes.
if we're talking about Clooney, then no, he's useless. He's just
Okay,
a
yeah.
good-looking guy.
Well, he makes coffee or sponsors it.
It's fun. He drives
Um,
around. Yeah.
yeah, he looks, pretty. Sipping it. You gotta sip it. It's espresso.
You do know he spits that out after every take, though. It's like,
Well,
get this
that's
shit
how
away from me.
that's how you stay so young. No
Yeah.
caffeine. We're sidebarring. Oh yeah. Well, so
And
Congo
then this
was a
movie,
movie.
yeah.
Sphere with Sharon Stone.
Sphere, Jurassic Park, Lost
Jurassic Park.
World.
Yeah.
There's one I'm forgetting though. There's another thing, I
Anyways,
think.
doesn't matter. I have not seen this movie though. It was too old.
Mhm.
Um, and I didn't delve into 71 films. Well, apparently I did, but not intentionally. And I
Actually,
think that's
I was
about it.
thinking about this here too. This is another little sidebar, but just something that I was kind of thinking of interesting, which is even though I feel like I've seen like a lot of older films, like films that were out before I was born, I think you definitely get when you get older, it's like easier to keep up to date with what is coming out like right now. So when I look at like on my letterbox, particularly, you can see actually movies by year. And like there's this huge spike in like the late 2000s because yes, that's when I was going to university and then graduated, and then I'm seeing a movie a week ish in theaters because that was my thing to do. And so like even though I've seen a bunch of 70s films, it's not like 1971 has like 50 films I've watched in it. It was like I've seen 4 of these films from 1971 and maybe 5 from 1972. So I think going through a year by like an entire year starts to really color your perception of like, oh, all these things were out at the same time. That's kind of interesting. Um, I don't know. I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Well, I mean, so far we've watched
This is our
three.
third.
Yeah, and they're
Will be
already
our third.
they're already fascinating, like culturally impactful wise. This
Yeah.
one I don't think is going to be any different. But yeah, looking forward at our list, presuming that I'd read it, which I haven't, and I'm going to assume that we're going to hit a lot of these weird movies that we've probably never heard of, even that have some kind of historical significance. I wonder if you could say that for any year of any movie in any year, because you're making them for a reason. So
Yeah, I mean, I think what you come down to is, I mean, it's always going to be personal preference, of course, but there is going to be certain years that you think stand above other years.
right,
But I don't think there's ever been a year where I have not seen at least one like very good to great film somewhere. Whether I saw it that the year it came out is another point, but it's like, oh yeah, like this indie film that I didn't watch until like 5 years later. It's like, it's amazing. It's great. I watch it all the time. I think there's
if there
always
is a
something to
year,
find, or it's like
if
an
there
international feature or something like that, right?
if there would be a year, it'll probably be in the 80s somewhere. There's just
Where
something
it's
about
not good.
yeah. There's
Yeah,
if there is
probably.
one, yeah, 86 or something.
I mean,
Name a movie from 1986. It's weird. It's a weird number. Yeah.
to throw shade a little bit, I do think that I think it's I forget what year. Now I'm going to forget the year. But I always remember like 2007 being like this really great year for film for me, because there was like 5 to 6 like great films I thought that came out, and almost like right back to back. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? But then there's like a couple years later, I want to say it was like 2009, and I remember like every movie I've come has like either been mediocre or bad. It's just like it just went through a stretch like this is a bad year this year. Yeah. Anyways, I'm kind of there with you with Michael Crichton. Definitely, it was Jurassic Park was like the big jump start for me. You know, you watch that movie and like this is amazing, and I was like right at the right age, like still kind of into dinosaurs. So I was like, this
You
is
live in
cool.
Alberta. This is like dinosaur country.
Of course. I mean, but I mean, Jurassic Park came out when I was 10. So like I was still like, you know, a little boy, knew all the names of the dinosaurs, but I don't
go across
anymore.
the street to Drumheller. I'm pretty sure you can just walk there.
Wait, that was great. When we went to Drumheller on a trip in the summer, that was like amazing to me. And so then I wanted to read the book. So I read Jurassic Park, I don't know, a few months after I watched the movie. I read a lot above my weight class back then.
Humble brag. Let's move on.
And I loved it. I remember really loving the book Jurassic Park, and then The Lost World was also great. And then I was so disappointed by the movie The Lost World because it doesn't, except for the RV scene of it like falling over the edge. Like none of that movie is actually about
salvageable.
What's in the book.
I mean, Jurassic Park still holds up. We just watched it on Netflix, and
it's great.
Masterpiece.
Yeah. What's wild is that Steven Spielberg makes Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year. Isn't that bizarre to you?
Well, I'll give you a more bizarre thing. Is that the right way to say that? I just learned that when they were making Andromeda Strain, Michael Crichton took a tour of Universal Studios. And do you know who his tour guide was? Steven Spielberg.
That's crazy.
Right?
That's amazing.
Like a young Steven Spielberg who's like interning, whatever, right?
Right.
So they actually met.
They had actually finally given him a job because he used to sneak onto the lot without a badge and just like go and look at movies and stuff like that.
At least this is what the internet tells me. I can't verify. Right. We'll call Steven later, just see what he says about that.
I do have a history with this movie in that I had a roommate here a few years ago that they really liked this movie. And it's like, have you seen the Andromeda Strain? I'm like, no, I've never seen the Andromeda Strain. And so we sat down and watched it one night.
Oh, I've seen it before.
So I've seen it before. I've actually seen this movie before. But I was thinking about it. What's wild is that I cannot tell you a single thing that happens in this movie, even though I know I have seen it. And I know the exact date that I watched it on because I tracked it, of course, on my Letterboxd page. So I know the date I watched it. I know the rating I gave to it. And I remember almost nothing about this movie, except for I remember a scene happening in a red room. That's basically all I can recall from this movie.
So not the buttocks.
Not the buttocks.
That didn't stand out to you.
For some reason, the buttocks did not stand out to me. I do not know why, but
spread them.
So I'm excited to jump back into it and see maybe is there a reason why I don't recall this movie or what's going on. But yeah, so let's do that. Let's go. I'm going to go and thank some sponsors, and then when we return, we'll be jumping into talking about the Andromeda Strain. All right, Dave. We went through our 5 levels. We're ready to talk about this. We've got our skin sloughed off. What was in the most non-spoilery way possible? What are your impressions of the Andromeda Strain?
Number one, I want a diamond helmet. I think that's important.
If that did not inspire Daft Punk, I'm not quite sure. Yeah.
I think I quipped to you during the movie that if I'm covered in skin ash, am I white facing? Is that a?
You definitely have a pale face. That's sure.
I don't know. It was interesting. It was very 1971.
Yeah, there's no way around it. It's like this is a 70s film,
right?
Although I will say, I mean, again, small sample size. We've only watched 3 films from 1971. I would say, bar none, that this is the best looking film that we've watched so far.
Yeah, high production value. And as we'll learn about the director, I don't know how much the budget is, you'll tell us, but apparently this guy was a master of shoestring budgeting. Like he's a very meticulous human being. So it'll be interesting to see how this pans out from a money perspective, but definitely this is an experienced filmmaker.
Yeah.
Again, as we'll learn, who understood the craft. I thought it was an experience. Like, I will say that I enjoyed it. It didn't make me make a cringe face or want to walk away, but it's got very awkward moments, just because we're in 2021 and how movies of this nature move now. I mean, it's pretty slow. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it drags a little bit, particularly the first hour and a half, and then you get 30 minutes of some action.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's my non-spoiler. Everything else, I think we have to dig into what they're talking
Yeah.
about. So yeah.
So I guess I'm slightly similar to you. I have a feeling now that we might give this the exact same rating once again, but
I don't know why
we'll
you're
see.
surprised every time. Yeah.
We'll see. Mostly because there's sometimes I'm like, I don't think David's gonna like this very much, and then you sometimes surprise me. But I think this film essentially is broken out into your three acts. I think that the setup of the discovery of the Andromeda strain, whether it's a virus or a bacteria, they don't know yet, but that whole section of them discovering it, radioing in, going back to the town, all these dead bodies, I think all of that is actually very well done.
It's a horror movie.
They get all the four doctors together, and then I think it comes to like this giant narrative halt where they get to the facility and then they have to go through those 5 levels of decontamination, and
It's
then
like an
they're
hour.
finally I didn't actually time it, but I'm pretty sure it's like 15 minutes of them just going through room after room after room, getting like a whatever, their skin sloughed off, going through like baths, like just walking around. I'm like, this is so uninteresting to me that I don't understand why they're spending so much time on this particular point of the story. When I think later on, the discovery of the thing is what's more interesting and important to get to. They could have done all of that stuff in like maybe 2 minutes and be like, yep, they went through all these levels, boom, we're here. Now we're trying to investigate what's going on.
That section made me question what the movie's actually supposed to be about.
Yeah.
Like, is it a horror movie about a virus, or is it about like what it takes to decontaminate a human body or
Right.
technology? But I agree with you. Because of that, I got very confused about what I'm supposed to be watching. Like, what am I watching for?
Right. Yeah. And then just to finish that thought, like the last bit is them, discovering what it is, fighting it, and the resolution. But there was actually a movie that I want to compare it to that is actually kind of different. But the reason why I want to compare them is kind of the process it goes through, and I think it's somewhat similar to The Insider in that longer type movie that's all about kind of like the process of doing something. And in both cases, in my opinion, it's like these experts doing things really well, uh, and then just following that process. And The Insider, it's like this journalist who follows his lead, is tenacious enough to follow up on it, isn't happy with the result, and keeps fighting, 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 and eventually kind of wins the day, to little to no fanfare. And in this movie, it's like these 4 scientists who are good at what they do, and you are shown the process of how like actual science really happens, of them testing things out, figuring out what the issue is, and then hopefully saving the day. And I there's something that I enjoy about that I just like seeing smart people doing smart things in a really well done way. But that middle portion, man, drags so badly. It just drags so much, which is a shame that is the case for it. Like overall, I think I enjoy this movie, but it's never going to be my favorite. It's going to be kind of middle of the road for me. To spoil the lead a little bit, this is actually something that I am critical of the director Robert Wise in the later part of his career, because if you don't know, one of his last movies that he directed was Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which, oh boy, if you have not watched that movie, the first Star Trek movie, it is glacial how that movie moves. It is
Classic.
just like, I'm pretty sure the docking sequence takes 10 minutes of them just docking a plane. It's like, oh my God, like just do something. Please do something. So I think you can kind of see that kind of issue happening here as well.
I was reading about the special effects coordinator. Pretty interesting life, but I think they brought him on to Star Trek because Star Trek's the special effects company couldn't deliver any of the scenes. And so like he had less than 6 months to develop every special effect out of practical whatever. And it might be one of the reasons why that movie looked the way that it did. But, you know, I don't know. This movie too, I found out the same guy that did 2001 Space Odyssey. And you can, this is the thing, you can kind of tell. Once you hear it, you're like, yeah.
I mean, the special effects or whatever. I guess what I love about these types of films, and that what we're going to really see in 1971, these are all practical effects, all in-camera shots. The like computer interfaces, I think always look goofy, and like that's not what it's going to look like. It's not even what it looked like then. So I don't know why they developed them like that for the films back in that time. But them, you know, climbing the ladder or using those like little machines and stuff like that. It's like, well, that's actually happening. I don't know. There's something about that when I know that it's actually going on and not just composited through CG. That is a little bit more thrilling to me.
That's why Jurassic Park holds up.
Yeah.
Because it's practical. Many of the practical effects hold that movie together.
Yeah.
Helen's been complaining that I just spend all my time now watching movies going, green screen. And she's like, what's wrong with you? I know. We can, because we're not losers.
I may or may not have been watching the 2018 cinematic classic Aquaman last night.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
And there are certain scenes it's like, this is a video game thing I'm watching here now. What is going on? Anyways, we're not talking about that movie. If we ever talk about 2018, though, maybe we can discuss Aquaman here on the podcast, Dave.
That might be a good year to assess whether that was a bad year in film. Yeah. Any year a DC movie comes out, you have to start questioning yourself, because
we'll talk off podcast, but I have a hot take on Batman v Superman. Anyways, not relevant to our discussion here today. Let's get into it. Some of the backstory so we can delve into some of the deeper themes that the Andromeda Strain is doing. So the Andromeda Strain was released on March 12th, 1971. So happy birthday, because that's, I think, next Friday is going to be the birthday of that. When this is released, when this episode is released, Dave.
Deep and rich fiction. I got it.
It is rated 7.2 on IMDb. It has a 60 on Metacritic, and on Rotten Tomatoes, from 39 critics, it's at 67%. And Rotten Tomatoes updated its website. So now it says 5,000 plus users give it 72%. I don't know what the 5,000 plus means, but that's how they notate it. It is available on DVD and Blu-ray. It can also be rented or purchased from iTunes. Or if you're in Canada, you can also rent this from the Cineplex app. So if you want to use the Cineplex app, you can.
Is that still a thing?
It is. So its budget was actually fairly high for 1971. It was $6.5 million is what the budget was for this movie. I think you can tell that this is a pretty high budget film. Don't know about the opening and that sort of thing. I do know that after its run through theaters, it got $12.4 million, or $79 million with inflation. Fun fact: this movie did not make as much as Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song. So even though it had a higher budget, higher production value, it did not make as much as that movie.
Sex sells, man.
Its plot description from IMDb is: a team of top scientists work feverishly in a secret, state-of-the-art laboratory to discover what has killed the citizens of a small town and learn how this deadly contagion can be stopped. Definitely nothing relevant about what we are seeing today. It stars Arthur Hill as Dr. Jeremy Stone, James Olsen as Dr. Mark Hall, Kate Reed as Dr. Ruth Levitt, and David Wayne as Dr. Charles Dutton. Anything you want to say about those actors, Dave?
Yeah, 2 Canadians,
nice.
Which is awesome. Yeah, everybody here, because of the era, is theater trained, so you know they've got some chops. Some Tony Award winners.
So that people know, who are the Canadians in that cast?
2 of them.
Yeah.
No, Arthur Hill, who played the lead, he grew up in Saskatchewan. You might know, in Melfort,
No.
Saskatchewan.
No,
Melfort. Anyone? Anyways, studied at UBC, and because these people are all from the born in the 1910s, they all have like World War II history. Is fascinating.
Well, they would. Sorry. They would not have been born in 1910. They would have been born in like
Yeah.
1940.
No,
Oh, well, the
David
old guy,
Wayne's
maybe the
David
old
Wayne's
guy
born in
was.
1914. Arthur Hill's born in 1922. I mean, they're all
Wow.
pretty old. Yeah, they're all pretty old in this film.
So they
They're
must
not
be like, oh, I guess they're in their 50s, not in their
50s,
40s, like I
60s.
was thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And like people looked older back then. Come on.
That is true. Like
Something's changed in the water.
40 in 1970 is like
It's
20 in like yeah. Or sorry,
here's something
no,
that
40 in 1970 is like 80 in like nowadays times.
Yeah, sometimes you watch those productions, like they're supposed to be teenagers, and you're like, no, that guy's
Like,
that guy's got kids for sure. Yeah,
That guy is smoking 15 packs a day and like
yeah.
has heart medication he has to take.
What's his name from Godfather 2? Anyways, James Cromwell. I mean, he looked awful. So this is something you'd be interested in. Arthur Hill won the first, is it the first Tony for something? But he was in the original production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
so
cool.
it's kind of a big deal. I thought you would,
because that would have come out. I didn't, because that would have come out in 1960 something is when Who Was Afraid of Virginia Woolf, I think, came out.
I mean, that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Kate Reed. So the character that she plays was originally a man in the book.
Yeah. Thanks for stealing my thunder, but
oh, fine. All right, I'll leave that for you, jerk. She's also theater trained. She grew up in Toronto and went to an all-girls school called Havergale, which still exists, I think.
Nice.
Who knows?
Something I didn't actually mention in like the non-spoilery section, and maybe we'll get into this. She is my favorite character from the movie, but yes. I think it's because she's given something to do. I actually find the other three actors, it's like not that they're bad. It's just like they're not given much of, they're wooden characterizations. Like there's nothing about them that makes them inherently interesting, but regardless.
Yeah, we'll get to that too. I mean, it felt like they were trying to make, what's the main doctor's name?
That's Dr. Mark Hall. Yeah.
Hall, yeah. That he, like the way they shot him sometimes, it looked like he was going to be a conspirator.
Right, yeah.
But then it turned out to be nothing. David Wayne, the older guy, won the first Tony for a musical or something like that. It's kind of interesting. So he's kind of a big deal
first, too. Wait, sorry. The first thing for
I think,
musical?
Hold on, let me just look.
You can't just say the first Tony for a musical.
It was like the first time a Tony was awarded a musical to a musical, and I don't have the name of the actual show. I thought I wrote it down. But that was a long time ago because he's pretty old. He was born in 1914. Yeah, right. But pretty interesting. I don't know. Other than that, this one, the guy, the doctor, the medical doctor, doesn't have a lot of info. It looks like he just kind of disappeared, which is kind of weird.
I actually find that most of these actors, just looking them up, didn't really do a whole lot after this. Like, it's not like they had major films after this.
I feel like I mean, Arthur Hill apparently was a big deal and it's got a lot of credits, but not stuff that that stayed culturally relevant.
Yeah, I guess, or they went into television and stuff like that.
Yeah, TV or they go back to theater.
But it's like, I've never seen this TV show, or in some cases, I've never even heard of this TV show, so I don't know.
Yeah, they're like, oh, he was famous. Arthur Hill is most well known for Owen Marshall, Counselor. I'm like, what the fuck is Owen Marshall?
Like, who knows? No one watches this. Yeah,
did not hold up. I actually, you know what? We should find it. Maybe it's really good.
That's who knows. Yeah, that would be the shocker punch. There's actually the best TV show. It's like the best.
Such entitled brats.
This was written by Nelson Gidding, adapted from the book by Michael Crichton, and directed by Robert Wise. So the book, The Andromeda Strain, was published in 1969. Although this was Crichton's sixth book, it was actually the first to have his real name on the cover. Before that, up until this point, he had been writing with the pseudonym of John Lang. And Crichton used the pen name John Lang because he planned to become a doctor and didn't want his patients to worry that he'd be writing about them in his scripts and in his books. So interestingly enough, Crichton does get an MD, but never practiced. Those early books, the ones that did not have his actual name on them, pure pulp books. And he knew that. He literally said these were things that would distract you on a flight that could be read in 90 minutes. That was what he was writing for. The thing about it is that he didn't actually want to become a doctor. He wanted to become a writer. He knew he wanted to become a writer, went to medical school because he thought that that was what you had to do, but really was writing in his off time as much as he possibly could. But I mean, by the time he graduated, he like published 6 books. So it's like he was doing pretty well for himself. So he's in medical school. He reads the spy novel, The Ipcress File, IPCRESS. They're all capitalized. I don't know what that stands for.
Acronyms. That was a big thing. Do you remember the Odessa File? That's a good book.
Written by Len Dayton. Do you know who Len Dayton is? Were you a Dayton head?
No.
Apparently he's very popular. I don't know. He's
you just gave me such a sour look. You're like, that's disappointing.
So it's that book is about the Cold War, brainwashing, atomic weapons tests, that sort of stuff. It would actually also become a film in 1965 starring Michael Caine.
Michael Caine. All right. We should watch that.
Yeah. What it did, what they were doing in that book, and what I think blew Michael Crichton's mind, is that it was a fiction. It was a made-up story, but it also featured real people. Like, it was real politicians and everything around the outskirts, but a fictionalized story with the protagonist doing, real quote-unquote things. Like, it felt like this is something that could really happen. So he's inspired by this, writes his own book called The Andromeda Strain from doing his own research, publishes it, becomes a bestseller, and then Universal comes and buys the film rights for $250,000. But like you mentioned, they wanted to modify it somewhat. Specifically, Nelson Gidding, the screenwriter, pushed to have the character, Dr. Levitt, be a woman, because in the book it's a man. But interesting enough, so Robert Wise was initially pretty unenthusiastic about that. It's like, why should we change this? But to his credit, he went and asked the opinion of a bunch of doctors. He's like, should we change this character to be a woman? And they were like, yeah, you should. I think that's a great idea. So it was because of them saying, like, it makes sense to have this character be a woman, et cetera, et cetera. So they do. They change it. And it actually, Robert Wise is now on record as saying, like, that it was a good change because it's his favorite character in the piece. Gidding himself specialized in adaptations, mostly stuck to television, but he had worked with Robert Wise before. The most prominent other movie was The Haunting from 1963, which is a pretty big, well-known horror film. Regardless, Robert Wise, in my opinion, has like this absolutely fascinating career because he starts his career in film at RKO as a sound and music editor. He then works his way up to become a film editor, working on a bunch of films, but also editing a little movie. I don't know if you know or have heard about this movie, Dave. It's called Citizen Kane.
That's odd. That sounds familiar.
It's tickling something in the brain. So he edits Citizen Kane, nominated for an Oscar for editing. He then also edited Orson Welles' follow-up, the controversial The Magnificent Ambersons. Controversial in that Wells was fired from that movie when he was on vacation, so he never got like director's cut on that. And in fact, Robert Wise would go on to film additional scenes for that movie, put them in, change the ending of what the original movie was supposed to be about. A lot of people will still consider The Magnificent Ambersons one of the best movies of all time, but Wells had basically disowned that movie because they took it away from him. So he would go on to become a director, and at first worked in the horror and thriller genre. His breakout would be the original The Day the Earth Stood Still. He'd get his first Best Director nomination for a film called I Want to Live, which was this biography of convicted killer Barbara Graham. So one of the first women serial killers.
Did you read about what he did to research that role?
No, what did he do?
So he's famous apparently for doing very in-depth research. So just like you talked about him asking the opinion of actual doctors about a film about doctors, he decided he needed to attend a live execution to understand how to shoot an execution.
Yeah, okay. Okay, great.
I mean, this guy, I called it in our write-up method directing. I mean, this guy,
really,
he gets in there, man. He's like, oh, I got to shoot next. Let's watch a human die. I need
to make pictures around this. This is amazing. This is fascinating. So in the 60s, though, there seems to be like this hard pivot because he would go on to direct 2 huge musical adaptations. The first was West Side Story in 1961.
I've heard of that one.
Which, I mean, I am like the Sondheim like fanatic, so like of course I know West Side Story, but like that cleaned up at the Oscars that year. He wins Best Director. And then in 1965, he directs The Sound of Music, that also cleaned up at the Oscars that year, wins him his second Best Director Oscar. But then his like the third part of his career is he would go on to do like these sci-fi thrillers. So the Andromeda Strain, and then Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And there's another one I'm forgetting. But anyways, he would continue working up until the year 2000. So he actually, was pretty prolific of a person. The biggest thing about Robert Wise, and especially if you watch like The Sound of Music or West Side Story or even this movie, I am such a fan of how he actually photographs things. Like he loves like these wide shots. He actually very rarely does close-ups, which I think is like an interesting technique. So it's like always like I am kind of further away. I want everything to be in the frame, and really follows the action along of what's going on. Anyways, I just love West Side Story so much. And I think it's in part because of how he directs it, because you're seeing everything and it's not cutting every 4 seconds. It's like, no, these people are actually dancing and they're actually doing these feats of strength and stuff. Anything you want to comment upon about Robert Wise?
I don't know. Oh, like just speaking about how important he was, he's like, wasn't he like director of the Academy? He was
he could have been
director of the Directors Guild. He was like the top president of the Academy.
I know he's held a bunch of offices.
He's a big deal.
One thing that does also need to be said, like especially his noir work, like the first part of his career, deeply influential for Stanley Kubrick. Quentin Tarantino steals a lot of those techniques and stuff like that too.
What doesn't Quentin Tarantino steal?
True enough.
Let's do an episode about Tarantino. Really, I got some opinions about that guy.
But yeah, Robert Wise, like a wild, weird career, I think. But yeah, basically did these 3 very specific parts of his career.
Yeah, it's wide because it sounds like he studied his craft and tried not to get pigeonholed. So he sounds like a really interesting dude. If he wasn't dead, we should go out, have a coffee with him, just figure out what he was thinking. Yeah.
But he is well and truly dead. So been so for like 16 years, but yes.
Yeah. Just start a seance, get a Ouija board. Ouija. Is that still a thing?
Yeah.
Ouija.
Dave, let's get into some spoiler talk here. So where do you want to start? Like what do you think we need to unpack about this movie?
Well, I think we have to start with UV lighting your butthole. I mean, that's an attention to detail. I mean, as much as that dragged,
I have to pay $150 for that nowadays. So.
I was surprised when they started the 5-level decontamination that it took so long.
Yeah.
But B, like they really wanted to show what it would take to truly shed any potential growing ground of bacteria. Yeah, I don't know. To your point, like it starts off, and I thought it was going to be a horror movie, sort of like zombies, and it was for like the first 15 minutes.
You can tell that's kind of where he cut his teeth on, was doing those types of horrific films.
And it was hard to understand the tone of the movie from there on. So it starts off, and I started thinking like this feels a little bit like a high budget B horror movie. You got these random guys, the radio call, there's a man or there's somebody coming and screaming, and you're like, what the fuck am I watching? And then,
I mean, I just want to pick up on that point very specifically, because you talk about Robert Wise being able to work with shoestring budgets, and it's no wonder like he was probably like so beloved by studios, because I think he was effectively able to ratchet up tension without feeling cheap. Because I think you're right, it feels like a B movie but with like a big budget behind it. There is that at the beginning when those 2 people are sent into the town and you just hear their voices on the radio and you don't see anything. It's just their voices on the radio and the reactions of the people in the command center. And I was like, what a great way to introduce what's going on, because that's what it would feel like to be in there. It's like, we don't know what's going on until our scientists arrive and start to investigate.
I that's the thing. It's the ability to actually put the audience in a tense situation and feel the suspense, because you're in the control room, so you have to guess instead of watching presumably like a slasher flick, somebody getting their throat slit. Although it is quite visceral once the scientists get in there, and that was unflinching. I was at first a bit disappointed when the soldiers arrive at the doctor's house and his wife is like this awful plastic cardboard cutout of a 50s
Right.
housewife. But that's why it was so amazing when they brought in the female doctor who's like this total badass. She didn't give a fuck about anybody. It's awesome.
Just chain smoking and
Yeah.
whatever.
And it had personal significance to me because throughout her whole degradation of her psychological problem, like this woman has epilepsy, and it turns out she has epilepsy because I'm like, I know this, I feel this, it's shot well. I'm sure that Robert Weiss went and hung out with a lot of epileptics because it's
maybe, yeah,
it's done really well. Like having those local focal, we won't get too much into that, but when she starts spacing out, I've lived that. It's fucking weird. Anyways, but like we said, we build it up really well. They assemble this secret team. There's a part even with the cheesiest parts visually are the cockpits with the pilot jet fighter cockpits, because it felt like, what was that marionette, like Thunderbirds or whatever. There's something little cardboardy about that. But yeah, they assemble this super team and they get into their suits. And once they get into the town, it's actually quite enthralling, because there's dead bodies, they're showing dead children, animals, like they don't, like it's a real real tragedy, real problem.
And really, like the cutting of the open and like their crystallized blood like flowing out, and again that process comes into play here, because it's like, we made fun of it here a couple of times, but like the look at his buttocks, like if this is a dead body, the blood should pool at the bottom of it, and there's no bruising. So what's going on here? And I'm trying to figure that out and uncover what's going on.
And it was gruesome too. Like, the woman that committed, like, hung herself off her band. Like, they don't, it's unflinching. The only cheesy part is they have the beautiful woman. They like zoom in on her breasts, her naked breasts. I mean, that's a little gratuitous. Twice, I think they do the cutaway. And it was interesting. It's so 60s. The cutaway portions, it felt like a TV show. That became a bit of a trope for spy TV shows.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's awkward too. You know what I hated the most were those stupid cutaway scenes, or like the captions and the sound effects for that, like the first half, and they'd have black line and like
news crawl.
It doesn't actually even go across the whole frame, and they put this like ear piercing shit, like sounds, and really took me out of the narrative. I kind of just wanted to turn off the movie. Whenever that
I will say, I guess your mileage will vary. This movie is somewhat well known for part of its editing because of like the split screen stuff it's doing, where it's like 3 different images up on the screen at the same time. And I think that's actually kind of effective in a few different cases. Like the kind of the very first time it happens, they're walking and then like the black line comes across on the right hand side, and then another image flashes up on the right. So it's somewhat innovative at the time to be doing something like that, which I think is now used or parodied quite a bit, so people are just used to it. So YouTube uses it all the time.
Did you also find it a little bit confusing, like the cutaways with the Senate hearings, and I couldn't frame the political idea of it.
Maybe I would have the first time I watched it. I guess coming into it, having seen this before, I was starting to remember things as it was going along. If you look at the dates when they do pop up, you can see pretty quickly, it's like the main doctor, Hill, I keep forgetting, Hall is in a hearing.
Is that the future?
A congressional hearing, which is the future. 1971 is the future, and 69 is when this actually happened. So when they flash back to 69, it's like this is all happening back then, and now in present day, they're talking about it to this committee hearing. So that's basically the framing device, is that they're all back there talking about it and then flashing back like to what actually happened.
See, like I missed that. And, there's only one sort of narrative voiceover when the alarm machine fails. And that came out of nowhere for me. And I was like, why is somebody talking about something that's happening in the past tense? So once they assemble the super team, I don't know if this is already sort of a trope about driving in a hidden road in the desert to a secret lab, like 50 stories underground. If it's
I feel like that was like I would say that's probably like a 50s sci-fi trope almost. Something similar to that has happened before, but But
And then as
I
soon as they
think,
enter the facility, you get this, it feels like an hour. It's not just the decontamination. It's like talking about how the system works and the
yeah,
weird keys, and then the odd man hypothesis, which I kind of was on Wikipedia.
which is
Turns out,
complete bullshit.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was like meant to be bullshit, and then it feels like bullshit when he's bringing it up. But you're
Right.
like, maybe
Just
this is a part of the
just in case
story.
people are listening and have not seen the movie, the was it the No Man
The odd
something?
man out.
The Odd
It's like
Man Out concept.
hypothesis, something.
Hypothesis is what they call it. They
Yeah,
make it sound like it's an actual thing that people should know. In and of itself, what it means is that people that are not in a relationship are more likely
not just
to,
people, single men who are
single men
unattached,
specific,
who are
yeah,
the most rational.
are the most rational
Yeah.
people, which is like, that sounds made up, which it is.
Uh,
It's not based on any type of fact.
well, I think what I read, I mean, I have to read the book, is that it's meant to be that in the book too, that the
Yes,
whole thing is fabricated so that this one guy has to shoulder the burden of potentially allowing them to blow up or not.
an entire town. Yeah.
So yeah, that part is, I don't know. It's hard to get through because that's what made me question, like, is this supposed to actually be an anti-technology movie or like and I think it's all like, I think there are pieces of that everywhere, but that part's a bit of a drag. And that's the only part that part's survivable. You can get palatable because of Kate Reed.
Hmm.
Her talking shit about the whole thing and hating it with us makes it something we can go through. But like you said, I think that could have been a 2-minute montage. I don't know if we need to spend like him, like the doctor flirting with the voice and all that
I know, it's
stuff.
like none of this is anything. Like it never goes anywhere. It's never referenced back again. There's no like payoffs to any of that type of stuff. This gets into like some of my other major criticisms, which is like, I think it's a little bit disappointing. And I mean, I think it's just because Michael Crichton was so enamored by spy fiction, but it feels a little bit too cartoony for me at the very end too, of them having to turn off the alarm. It's like, there's none of these keys down here on the lower level. Like, well, why not? Like, I don't understand why there isn't.
It's like
That
a
seems
Star
like
Trek episode at
it's
the
like a
end. Yeah.
huge design flaw. Like, it's like the only reason that it's not down here is because the plot doesn't want it to be down here, and it feels a little bit cheap.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that, and like climbing up and the lasers hitting them. It's like, if this was a James Bond movie, I'd be way more forgiving because like, okay, that's the type of movie. But up until that point, it hasn't really been
It's trying to be very
that.
real. Yeah.
And it's like okay, now we've gone off the deep end to something completely different that I don't think this movie set itself up to be. So it feels a little bit weird. I wish that some of the actors were a little bit non-wooden. I don't know how to fix that necessarily, but I think just like the Kate Reed having those, like she has epilepsy and like she has a bit of a personality. I wish that they had given some other stuff to the other people to do, at least something. It's like some defining characteristic. Maybe this person is like obsessive compulsive, or this person over here is whatever, and then use that inside the plot itself in the adaptation. So
And
I don't know. There's some weird stuff there.
not that I want the decontamination scene to be any longer, but if they had made that scene about the four of them having different reactions so that we could build
Right.
up how they approach difficult situations. But it's only two of them that you watch. Even really, it's just the one doctor
Yeah,
flirting with the
really.
voice and getting, naked and dipped. You don't really see anybody else go through it. And the two older characters, they're so laissez-faire. They're like, this is just what you do. We'll meet you at the bottom. And then they pop out the door. It is kind of weird because you don't get that grounding who these other people are, and it becomes unimportant at the moment, but it should be so important by the end when they all have to panic because everything goes to shit. They even do that, some of the camera tricks where it seems like the main doctor is going to be this like conniving person who actually like maybe designed the virus, and the whole thing's about how he's trying to create a bio, and then that's not at all
Mm-hmm.
what the movie's about by the end. And
The only
even
other
with, yeah, I was just gonna say, like at the end when they finish the congressional hearing, what is this really about? It's not even about
yeah.
anything.
Well, yeah, I want to delve more into that here in a moment. Just the last thing, just about plot stuff before we get into talking about themes. I'm like 99.9% sure we watched them kill a monkey in this movie.
Oh yeah, the monkey's dead. And whatever they say,
I mean, there's
it's
that
just,
little flashing thing at the very beginning. It says like, whatever. I think it's like animal scenes supervised by whatever such and such a company. And I'm like, does that mean that like no animals were harmed? Because that's not what it says. That's not what the
oh, they
descriptor
were harmed. Yeah,
says.
yeah.
But because I'm very sure that they killed a few rats, and definitely that monkey was gassed to death, because it's pretty brutal watching that happen.
Did you read how they allegedly did that?
No.
The monkeys suffocated. They took the oxygen out of the tank and they put in carbon dioxide. And so it's actually suffocating to death. And then they allegedly resuscitated after.
Allegedly,
and just like, so it died, right? Like whether you successfully brought it back to life or not, we watched a monkey suffocate to death.
I find it like that scene would never happen in a modern movie. Like,
it'd have to be CGI. Andy Serkis would have to figure it out.
Andy Serkis would have to be that monkey. But I don't know. It was pretty distressing to me. I don't know. It was really awful because, cute. I don't care about the rats. Kill as many rats as you want. Honestly, I'm so deathly afraid of mice and rats. As like, just kill them all. I don't care. But for the monkey, because you can see it's gasping and it's like trying with its hand to try and get out, and it collapses. I'm like, this feels wrong to be watching this.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt, uncomfortable.
Back in the 70s, we didn't have to give a shit about any of this stuff.
Last week we talked about Mary Van Peebles getting raped by a hooker in a film. So this is just par for the course. I can't wait till next week when we see another depiction of some brutality that's actually happening on the screen.
We just drove this truck over a small person. Whatever. It was the 70s, man.
Actually, I'm sure when we hit like French Connection, we'll probably notice that someone actually died while filming
But I guess to your point, though, of like what this movie is about, like, do you have an answer for that? Is there something that you say, like, I think this is what the movie is trying to do?
I don't know. I think trying to put myself into 60s, 70s Cold War psychology, you get the paranoia of thinking about what the next weapon is going to be, because they reference the nuclear weapon all the time. They're trying to nuke the town. The bomb that's going to blow up the base is a nuclear bomb, because now we know that it allegedly eradicates everything. So there's a level at which I think this is about chemical and biological warfare, but it isn't really, because they don't really actually delve on it. And the disease itself is essentially not benign, but it's not created by people, and it's not meant to target a certain group. It's just this thing that came from space that's like a crystalline structure, and then conveniently evolves to not harm anybody, which is such a fucking cop-out. I thought maybe it was about the fallibility of machines, but then it turns out the humans fuck up everything. So then is it about how machines are more trustworthy than people? But then they kind of throw that out because they both screw up by the end. Is it? I was hoping it might be this intrigue about this doctor actually manipulating everybody, but they throw that out at the end.
I do think one of the things that it's really trying to lean on is, in a way, like, trust science, right? Like, if we go through the scientific method, if we test different hypotheses, if we look at the data, crunch the numbers, if we have these experts involved, then we can make quality decisions. And I think that's what it's trying to lean in on, which is why I find it so interesting to discuss this movie in the context of present day, where it seems more and more expertise is vilified, where if you are a quote unquote expert, well, you're talking down to me. Or it's like, well, I've read a Wikipedia article, so I'm basically the same level as you, even though you spent like the last 20 years of your life literally researching this. So
this is how our podcast operates.
You're the expert and I'm the person throwing bombs. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's in hindsight, a reflection that we've always been this way, and that human beings don't respect rationality. But there's also something essentially human about it, because the scientists all kind of fuck up at the end too, and they're at risk of making rash decisions and failing consistently. Maybe that's the real interplays, that you needed four of them, or like not just one person, to kind of balance each other out. But like you said, it wasn't developed enough for me to trust.
And I think that's what would make this movie go into like the great movie, is that is really what they leaned in on. Like, all four of them, incredibly talented, smart, but all coming at it from a different angle, and pushing each other to actually discover what the solution is, right? Where it's like, I'm sure it's this, you think it's this, you think it's this, and you think it's this fourth option. So let's figure this out. And we're not manipulating the data or anything, but it's like, okay, no, we've discovered that this is actually what it is, even through our disagreements, even through us pushing each other. And we can accept that because we all understand like this process that we went through is now telling us this thing.
Listening to you, I realized that's probably in the book, and they
Maybe.
are trying to show it because all four of them start off with their own field and bias and interpretation of what this thing is. But as we're talking about, it doesn't play out in the film because I don't know. Maybe it's the performances are uneven. I mean, as many as the two older guys did win Tonys and shit, they were the worst. Like they weren't bad actors, but they just couldn't really, other than one-dimensional approach. Like they were just these stern men who just know what's right. And
I personally think, like, again, having not seen them perform in anything else, I have no other basis for this. I feel like this blame may go either to Michael Crichton's original book or the adaptation of them just not really being given anything to do. Because really, they're written to be stern men, and they're played by as stern men, but they're not really given anything else to play around with. And he said, like, here's your lines.
Well, they have that the line with the older scientist about how he's talking about he has like that evolutionary thing, and about he has this part where he's going to die because he thinks he's been infected. There is something there for him to work with. It's just, and he's not even that bad in that crisis scene, you know, when he's sweating out and trying not to get, you know, dead.
Don't get dead, folks.
You know, and he actually has a lot of that scientific critical thinking throughout their new discoveries, and he's kind of like second guessing them all the time with his own weird theories. But they don't, I don't know, it's just not there, not in a way that I could digest. And that might just even be a movie thing because movies are so visual. And when you get these overly intelligent dialogues, sometimes you just zone out because you're like, you know, maybe I'm not supposed to understand what they're talking about. You know, crystalline structures and these, it has the same chemical components. So yeah, I studied high school chemistry and I remember the word organic compounds, but fuck, I don't know.
But I don't know. Sure, you could be, you could literally be speaking like complete.
I'm here because I want you to show it to me. Right? I don't want to have a book. I don't want a notebook. Right?
Know what I feel this is? I think that response, by the way, because I agree in essence, which is like movies should do a lot more show rather than tell in those types of scenes, because the vast majority of people are like, sure, like what, I don't know. But at the same time, there's this trope that happens that I hate so much, and it's just a weird thing for me. Is I hate when people like explain it to me like I'm in third grade, or like that line that people are like, well, like you're a scientist. Why would you ever say it? Anyway, it bugs me so much. Like, yeah, but explain it to me like I'm this. I'm like, well, why? Like you should be smart enough to know what this person is talking about inside of this scene. But
I think from a special effects perspective, that was one of the most interesting parts, is that they do find a way to show an evolving crystalline structure. And so it becomes visually important. You know, the first time, I mean, it's a little cheesy because they had to do it with practical effects, but the first time you're looking at that green blob and then the screen goes and you're like, what the fuck? And then you know, they do that bit where they think she might be hallucinating because she's clearly got problems, and then every time they cut back to it, it grows a little bit until they can isolate the molecule maybe. I thought that was interesting to this point, that you're getting shown as well as the dialogue that this is an alien thing. This is not something you're supposed to understand. Its visual structure, it is growing. So there's fear. But again, I don't know if we're expecting too much because it's 2021 and we're bombarded by pseudoscience and information and all this stuff. I don't know.
I just feel I just really agree with you in the fact that I think that the ultimate resolution feels a bit cheap when it's just like, oh, actually evolved itself to not be, it's going to hit the ocean and it's going to like dissolve itself. I'm like, oh, okay, well that's not as enthralling as say like them figuring it out and them going and like giving well, not even a vaccine in this case, but like something that actually causes it to not replicate itself anymore, and that's what saves the day. It's like, actually, if we had just waited, this all would have just been fine.
It's as soon as they said cloud seeding, I'm like, we do that for hail. Like I don't understand how that's an important scientific approach. Even that becoming benign is such a cop out, like for the type of narrative it is. there's an evolving creature that it turns blood crystalline, that eats jet fighters' masks and skins. And then, you know what? At this point, it's fine. It just walks away, and everything's going to be okay. It just didn't feel fulfilling for a thriller. Maybe as a science book, if you're researching how evolution works, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's a thing that might happen, but I don't care. At this point, I've seen so many dead things. We need to kill this fucking thing, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you need to nuke it, right? Even though they were taking that out of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Or use those lasers like in the hallway, and you just gotta like laser them.
Yeah, laser it. There's a couple last things I have written down here. One, I think it's interesting. I think you can tell once again that the original story was written by someone probably in the medical field or understanding of science, because there's one of them that says, "Don't make the president think that we're wizards." And I think that's such an important line, because like, we are not miracle workers here. We have to figure this out, and we can give our opinions and our solutions, but it's not like it's a magic bullet. Even if we discover what this thing is, or we can kind of just for sure figure it out. So I think that that's important to like have as a base claim. It's like, we can only do as much as what we understand and what we can figure out from here. And the other thing, I think it's trying to very subtly, we're in, of course, the middle of the Vietnam War here, but we're also in the middle of the Cold War. So I think we have to remember too that there's these two things that are battling with the world's psyche, and especially America. But when they're going down on the elevator, he's like, I can see why kids are dropping out. Maybe we should too. Like, there's that idea. It's like, is this even worth it to try and do this type of thing? No wonder the hippies are like, just smoking up and dropping out, or doing extra level things. So I think there's like these hints and very surface level cultural commentary, and then like it gets kind of abandoned by the end. But I think there's some stuff in there that's kind of interesting.
I read one thing which I think I didn't notice visually, but I don't know if because Michael Crichton was on site or this was just something the director noticed, but apparently
something dropped.
Yeah, apparently how they deal with the seizures, so apparently when Kate, is it Kate Hall? I can't remember her name, but when the female doctor actually Kate Reid has the full, at the time called grand mal, now we call them tonic-clonic seizures. Apparently the doctor actor puts his foot under her head. And I think that's apparently a medical thing, because we will have a full body spasm. You can actually get a concussion. So like little details like that are fascinating. And then the other thing that I loved about that part is they're trying to just throw in a little bit of the stigma around like physical disorders. Mm-hmm. So there's this abstract disease, which nobody's actually seen really, like the other workers in the facility. She's having this seizure and everybody's like, she's infected, and they all run away and nobody will help her.
Yeah.
I love that part, because I'm like, that's how people experience these things, because never mind epilepsy, if anybody's sick, puking somewhere or like has lesions, our first instinct is to assume the worst.
And to run away,
Yeah, and to run away from it. And the one person that knew what to do was a medical doctor, who recognized the signs immediately. So there are like little moments where you're like, oh yeah, this was written by someone, like you said, that knows how these things play out. It's just too bad that...
Yeah. I should also say the other part that I actually really loved is like the mystery of it. It's like, why is this guy who's like drinking like pure alcohol,
and
Screech,
but
steno, that's what it is. The stuff that you burn underneath Sternos? Like buffet tables. Sterno, thank you. It's like the sterno drinker, old guy who's like off his rocker, and this little baby who can't speak, which again, brilliant bit of little script writing. It's like the one person who could tell us can't tell us, and the guy who was like probably drunk and stuff like that also can't tell us about why he survived or what was going on. So there's that mystery, like, what do these two people have in common, and really trying to figure that out, and then ultimately coming up with the solution, like, yes, I know what's going on.
This is how I think we should get the book. I have a feeling, like you're talking about, the book really stresses that the four of them are fighting for their own explanation, and in the end, it's the combination of four different disciplines of science that solve the mystery, and you don't really get that in the movie as much.
No.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the machine has told us that we have to wrap up here. So I guess we should ask those two questions that we always ask on this podcast. Dave, does this hold up? And do you think it is still culturally relevant?
I don't know. I mean, my problem with this is I think it moves unevenly. So I don't think that it's going to be like, I didn't really enjoy watching it. I enjoyed moments of it and some of the performances, but I think it's too uneven for this to be a movie that people will enjoy watching in the modern day. And I think the way that it's structured, it's not that relevant anymore. What we've learned about biological diseases, how we approach science, there are precursors to like suggest that we haven't evolved that much, but we've become so much more paranoid. Is that a way to put it? And with the internet and the way information is disseminated now, I don't know. I thought it felt primitive in a sense, like the way they deal with this space virus. And so I think it's kind of flat, and it's remembered probably because it's trope forming. Like, a lot of science thrillers are based on this sort of rhythm, but if I never watch this movie again, I'll be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think flat is a good way to describe it. There is, ultimately, I don't think it holds up in like, do I immediately want to watch this again? No. I don't think I would seek this out to rewatch a third time, to be honest. At the same time, I like, there are elements in here that I think would work in like an updated adaptation of this story. I mean, the big thing, I mean, we're still dealing with COVID and stuff like that. And I think that idea of like scientists coming together, trying to figure it out, coming with a solution, getting the vaccine, the further along of the storyline, of course, is going to be like then people being like, I don't think so. I think I know better than what you're telling me that we should do, or what your ultimate solution is. That this movie is not interested in, because it's all secret and it's becoming declassified, quote unquote. So no one actually knew what was actually going on in this storyline. But I do think that there is elements of these themes, they're still relevant today. They're still being dealt with. They're still being battled with. But the movie itself, like, I am definitely of Robert Wise's career, I'm going to be watching Sound of Music and West Side Story over this movie any day of the week.
Like, I haven't watched The Day the Earth Stood Still, the non-Keanu version.
Right.
But I would rather watch that. What were the other? I mean, I don't know if they'll be better.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. And I don't like horror movies, but I would be more apt to look at his other work before returning to this. And just a quick, I mean, this is just being nitpicky, but you know what the other thing that's changed is, like you brought up, this movie deals with a biological problem within the context of a military paranoia, but now we have corporate paranoia. So we have scientists working together, but they're trying to build something they can sell to the world as a profitable vaccine. And as we're learning already, it's total garbage. Like, they all compete. Some of them are
almost like medical research should not be monetized.
For a for-profit enterprise.
Yeah,
but you know what? We don't want to. The world's not wrong. I'm sure we're doing the right thing.
Thanks, communist.
So that's what I mean. I think the nuances have changed, and our definition of being woke is no longer about Area 51 and underground. I mean, we call those people crazy, not because we don't believe that they're underground facilities, but who gives a shit? We've got to worry about Big Brother.
This
now,
other
right?
stuff, yeah. We still will kill a monkey, though. That is still on the table.
What was the Dustin Hoffman one? Not Contagion, but didn't they kill a monkey in that one too? Outbreak.
Outbreak. Yeah.
Isn't there like a test monkey in that one?
I think so. It's been so long. It's been so long. I don't remember.
We should watch. We should have a viral video
of other virus movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's going to click on that. Then let's do this. Before we get into rating the movie here, then, that's what Dave and I thought. What do you think? You can send any feedback to kyleanddavevsthemachine@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter or Instagram with the handle KDVSTM. If you want to see the entire list of films we've If you want to see the
Whoa.
entire list of films we watched and the ratings we've given, you can go to our Letterboxd page, letterboxd.com/KDVSTM. And if you want to support us monetarily so that we can continue doing this podcast and not usher in another apocalypse, you can go to our Patreon page. There's a link in the show notes of this episode. You can support for as low as $1 per month. Of course, we do not want you to donate if it in any way causes you financial hardship. Something you can do for absolutely free, though, is to leave a rating and review on whatever app you use for podcasts. So let's get to rating this movie, Dave. Out of 5, what would you give the Andromeda Strain?
I think I'm going to go with the 2.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I feel like no matter how many moments I thought were kind of engaging, I think they're just bringing it up. But I'm not sure if I enjoyed the experience as a whole. So yeah, I'm going to go with the 2.
For me, it doesn't get into that level of bad for me. I always find like a 2 is a movie that I'm still going to remember because of how much I disliked it. I've given it a 3, just a middle of the road 3, where there's going to be elements of this that I remember, but I think there is a reason also that I watched this movie 5 years ago and remembered nothing of it. Right? It's just like it's a movie that washes over you, and it's like that was something that happened. Yeah, it's kind of right there. Now that is going to come to an average of 2.5. I know that we've only talked about 3 movies, but the new thing that we're doing, even though the hard and fast rating would put it into the second position, would you personally rate this like above Shaft? Like how would you put it in that list of 3?
I think Shaft is a more important film, so I would put it above Andromeda Strain. I think, like we discussed, if we were talking about politics, philosophy, and sort of relevance, Sweetback's more important. I'll never watch Sweetback again, but it's a much more important film than this.
Right.
So I mean, if is that the question you're asking? Because Sweetback,
like where would you put? Would you put this on?
No, I put it at the
last.
Yeah, it's just the most boring. Like it's of the 3.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of filmmaking, it's a better constructed visual spectacle, if you will. But I would watch Shaft quickly, and I would never watch the Andromeda Strain again.
Okay. So I guess what we are then coming up with here is that entering at the number 2 position is the Andromeda Strain. Well, let's find out what we're watching here next week, Dave. Push this button. Oh, well, we get to watch The Omega Man, a Charlton Heston movie. Do you know anything about The Omega Man?
I've heard the name, never watched the movie, and I think that Charlton Heston is not past it yet, so or racist yet. So as far as public persona, so I'm interested to watch this.
Well, not that I've watched this version, but the source material has been adapted 3 different times. And you probably have seen the 3rd version of this movie, which was I Am Legend with Will Smith. So same story. It's going to be the same storyline as that movie, but we'll get to watch this.
Charlton Heston did a lot of Last Man on Earth thing.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. He's like Planet of the Apes, Soylent Green. Like he did a bunch of those types of movies. If
anyone had the gravitas to handle being the last man on Earth, it would have been young Charlton Heston. I mean, that man exuded Hollywoodness. Him and Burt Lancaster.
Also, also talk about like people looking way older than they are, because he's probably like 50 in 1970, whatever, and he looks 70. Like that's what I mean. It's like he looks so much older than what he actually is.
I'm trying to remember Ben-Hur. He's probably 30 and he looks 50. I know there's some makeup because he grows older, but he's never child. He's not a cherub. He doesn't have a face.
And how about that beard in the 10 Commandments? I mean, come on, right?
Yeah, it looked, Moses rocking it.
Yeah. Anyways, look at my buttocks here. Are you sure this isn't anything to be worried about?
You know what we should do is I've got a lamp. It's not quite UV certified, but why don't we shine some light on it and just see what happens?
Let's do it. All right.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna actually try and watch the other two versions too. We'll see if I have
Omega
time.
Man.
Yeah.
When okay, where's Omega Man?
But here's the thing.
Oh,
So
we
next
rent it?
week, we're gonna rent it. There's Omega Man, but we also have to talk about Titus next
Oh,
week.
great.
So those
Is
are
that a
the two
rental
films.
too?
Well, we can watch Titus off of the other service
Okay.
as it's a bonus episode, anyways.
Okay.
Um,
So that one can be at our leisure. I think that's long too. Shakespeare.
Yeah, I think it's like 2.5 hours. Anyway, so those are the two films we have to watch this week.
Okay.
And then I am going to try and watch. I forget what the original movie is called. That's based on the source material. It's not called Omega Man. I think it is called Last Man on Earth. Actually, now that you say it. And then I Am Legend. So I'll watch all three of them.
Okay. So Last Man on Earth is like something from the 80s or something like that?
No, it was before that movie.
Oh, it's the original one. Okay.
The original one. So
okay.
Although the story that it's based on is called I Am Legend. So this is where it gets weird. So original story is called I Am Legend. It's adapted in like 1950, I think, as like The Last Man Standing. 1971 as Omega Man, and then I Am Legend in 2008 or whenever that movie came out.
Is this the one, Zombies and Underground People?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if that's what the Omega Man does, to be perfectly honest. They might do some other weird adaptation, but yes, it's about zombies that can't come out into the light.
Yeah, and then it turns out maybe he's the vampire.
Maybe he's the legend. We'll see, because the biggest thing is like the I Am Legend, the movie version, did the original ending from the book and then chickened out and did the ending to be happy.
Oh, right. I think I read that. Yeah. Because he's
so I don't know if this movie does the non-happy ending.
It's 1971, so
yeah.
I'm expecting to get skewered. Yeah, somehow. Everyone dies.
Damn you! You blew it up.
Speaking of that, I think I should go back and watch some 2000s Planet of the Apes. Not Tim Burton, but
those are the three new ones.
The three.
They're great. I love those movies. But
yeah. James Franco in like his last good role.
Well, interesting. I like the first one, but it's actually, I think, the
weakest of the three.
The weakest of the three.
Yeah.
It's the weird series where I think it gets better with each installment.
Yeah. Is Gary Oldman the second one? What's the third one?
The third one has Woody Harrelson in it, and I think maybe I can't remember who the second one is.
Yeah. I think Gary Oldman's the second one, but I could be wrong.
But it is the movies where I thought that they actually should nominate what's his face? Andy Serkis. Because I think he gives great performances in it.
He's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, he's whatever.
Okay. If we're going to keep doing the YouTube stuff, we need some material. I've got nothing other than the Chef trailer. What do we have? We have everything, right? Knights of Cabiria.
I don't know.
Shaft. Wait, what's left? Knights of Cabiria. Is it Knights of Cabiria, Shaft, Sweetback? Or is there something we've missed in between?
No. That's the next four.
I mean, we have the trailer. And then this one, if we have the energy.
Yeah.
Do you want to Helen was saying that we should take from the live stream when we're talking about how we're going to get canceled for Shaft before we start the episode and make that into a short.
Do we have footage of that?
Just if you have whatever you used for the live stream, there's a save somewhere.
Well, yeah, it's
because you don't.
If I started recording earlier, then yes, I would. But
okay. Well, she said it was on the live stream, so it must be somewhere.
Oh, then probably we could also just rip the live stream if we needed to. So
yeah, I'll look at that. I have to go wash them, but yeah, we'll do something, right?
We'll do at least one thing.
At least one or two. Okay. All right. All right, let's see. Is this going to work? Or do I have too many wires at this point? Who knows? Doesn't work that well here.
I was thinking, did we record a Cabiria thing, or is that what we're doing?
Video? No.
Okay.
We got too tired last time. So I don't actually remember the movie that well, but we have to do Cabiria. I'm on a different desk, so the camera looks so weird. I think it's a different height than the other desk used to be. So it's going to take me some time to... Okay. Well, I think that's okay. My hair's great. Sticking up on one side. That's what you want. All right.
Landscape, right?
Yeah, I think we're giving up on the shorts a little bit, right? You know, I was thinking about if we want to continue the shorts is, I'm just going to start recording because I'm going to forget, is, do you think there's a way we could just do it over FaceTime?
I don't think there's a way to record FaceTime is the only thing.
Oh, is that an Apple security thing?
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking it might be easier if we just, you know, just do this, just be like boop, and we don't have to do like a whole production because the shorts are kind of throwaway from a production value thing too. There's no point in editing them too much, but all right, we'll think about that. I don't know. What about, oh, we could Zoom each other on the phone.
Yeah.
And then if we need to, we can just send each other the files. Because then I don't have to worry about it too much from a post-production standpoint. But all right. Who wants to be the intro of Knights of Cabiria? I think it's your turn, right?
Yeah, I just don't want my snack to be in the frame.
Just as long as it's even. Oh, this is
too tall.
Too high. What's that?
I'm too tall.
Wow. I'm already already fighting with that. Does this go this way? Okay. I've been recording the whole thing. This file is going to be like fucking 15 gigabytes before we're done.
Okay.
4K.
I'm going to be talking to the camera.
Yeah, I kind of put there in front of each other. So, yep.
Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. My name is Kyle.
I'm still Dave.
And we are talking about the Knights of Cabiria this week. One of nope, that's not his name. One of Federico Fellini's earlier films that is also starring his wife, Giuseppa Medina, I think is how you pronounce her name.
Are they married already?
Yes, they would have been married by this point in time.
Good.
I don't know how much you remember about this movie, Dave, but I think I came away with it is that how much of a performer I love in this central role. I think Kabiri is this really fascinating character who is both like strong-willed and understands who she is, and at the same time really just wants to find love. And sometimes that ends in tragedy.
She is such an amazing clown, you know, in that theatrical sense. And she's such a powerful performer. I'm very halting today. Halting.
It's like you're speaking with Christopher Walken's cadence.
You know, you gotta be sure of what you're about to say, you know? Yeah,
I think what I was struck by, though, is the fact that this is definitely a film from the 1950s, but because it was shot over in Italy, it can get away with a lot of stuff that American films just could not at the time. And it just feels a lot more risque, I think, because of that, because I expect a 1950s film to be one way, and is very much not that.
Yeah, it's definitely not a Gene Kelly film. I think that
well, let's not throw Gene Kelly under the bus, okay?
I love Gene Kelly. He's great, but he's not a racist. And as far as we know, it's gritty. I mean, we're following the life of an Italian street walker. It doesn't pull a lot of punches because it's not like X-rated as some movies will look at perhaps when we travel forward in time a bit. But yeah, it's so European in that sense. It's unflinching, and it was interesting. It was an interesting movie to be introduced to.
Yeah, and I think something that I personally struggle with that we talk about in depth in the episode is that I've never been a huge Fellini fan, so this was interesting to come into a film with some preconceived notions, and me coming out on the other side a little bit more positive about him as a director, based on the other stuff that I've seen. So it's making me want to go and explore a little bit more of his oeuvre. But I think if you want to hear the full conversation, you can do so anywhere you get podcasts.
I thought you had a lilt there, and I thought you were gonna start talking like a shitty thing. You know, that's offensive, is it?
Eat my spicy meatball.
That they don't work well together.
No,
they don't. Yeah.
All right.
All right. What comes next? Shaft?
Yes. Yes, Shaft.
Good.
Okay. I guess you're introducing this one. 1 second. Let me push record.
All right.
And still, yep. Okay, we're good.
We're good. Hi, I'm Dave.
I'm Kyle.
And this is Kyle and Dave.
What is this?
This is Kyle and Dave versus the Machine.
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk about Shaft because he's one bad mother.
Watch yourself.
Just talking about Shaft.
Yeah,
it's the first time I've ever watched.
By the way, I just have to say, I am not legally allowed to do that ever again.
I think you pulled it off.
Sure.
This is the first time I've ever watched it. It was very interesting, even though everybody knows that classic song by Isaac Hayes, and they've made how many remakes did you watch?
They have made 2 additional remakes, and there was 2 more films in this original series. So yeah, there's been 5 Shaft films. altogether.
It's kind of a big deal. And as you can find out if you listen to our full episode, directed by a very, very important Black photographer and sort of like a civil rights icon. We enter the world of blaxploitation, so we do embarrass ourselves when we speak about this movie.
Yeah.
But overall, I think thematically super important, but as a film, I had trouble kind of keeping up with it. What about you, Kyle?
I was much more positive. I think that the content of this film is great. I was really in it the entire time. You can tell that this is very low budget. Like, they did not get a lot of money to create this movie, and as such, I think it does take away a little bit from that. I mean, back at the time, it would have probably seemed like gritty and like going against like the establishment sort of thing. And I think that plays to its strength. But as a film in 2021 to watch, it's just like, there's a little bit of a wall there for me to fully appreciate it. But I was a big fan of Shaft, I have to say. Like, I thought going in, I think I've heard like the parodies or the exaggerations of what Shaft is, and it's pretty brutal and it's pretty avant-garde for a film from the early 70s, and really goes for it. I think it tries to compare itself a little bit to the James Bond franchise, just the Black James Bond, but able to show like bare breasts, be able to swear. So for me, it's like this is like the cooler version of James Bond in the 1970s.
A lot of butts. There's some good buttocks. Very fit. People were fitter in the 70s, right?
Well, they didn't have all these stupid saturated fats that they eat all the time. It's like,
and they walked a lot. Shaft walks. I mean,
my bottled water has saturated fat injected into it.
What are you drinking? What are you drinking? It's not sweet water. It was fat water.
Water. That's right.
It's lipids. You got to get more lipids in your diet.
You need more lipids in your diet. It's a lipid diet. Come on.
What else was I going to say?
Soundtrack is great.
Oh, right. So we are also introducing ourselves to the loosening of the code era. So apparently, as we learned, this is the reason why we get good music in movies now. Because that wasn't true. That's weird, right? That wasn't a thing. And
actually, that is an interesting thing to bring up. The music specifically. I'm sure that there's other movies you could point to. But if you do watch like a lot of stuff from 50s and 60s, there's obviously like a score being to it, but like popular music being brought in doesn't seem to be a thing until we get to like this point in time.
And we'll discuss too about how, or this episode or another one, how that's influenced our historical picture of what it was like to live in the 50s. Because I just assumed everybody listened to fucking Rodgers and Hammerstein. I mean, you give me some names.
Hey, come on now. If you were not a teenager rocking out to the original Cast album of Oklahoma, then what were you even doing? That's what I have to say.
Living my life, Kyle. I was living my life. So it's good. We talk about it more in depth. Kyle has a huge thing about this movie, mostly because of its name.
Yeah.
And no, that's unfair. And listen to it, stream it. What do you say for podcasts?
Stream it or download it anywhere you get podcasts.
Pod it. Just keep podding. Pod with us. That's not going to take off.
It's not a thing. All right.
Uh-oh.
That one is going to be.
Does it look like a recording? I hope so. Yeah. Okay. Good. I just ruined my camera angle, but my camera remote stopped working. Connecting to camera. Oh, my angle's mixed up now. That's okay.
Not your angles.
I gotta be cognizant. All right, what's next? Oh, Sweetback. Fuck. All right.
We'll do that next week.
Yeah, you done?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to get back to this WandaVision.
It's gonna be okay. Do you know how many episodes there's supposed to be?
I did know, but no. I think 10.
Okay, not a lot though, right?
Yeah.
Like my treatment of it, like The Mandalorian, is going to pay off. How do I turn all this shit off?
Yeah, it's interesting what it would be like to binge this show. It's
I feel like it'd be better.
Discussions online.
I don't care.
Probably.
I don't talk to people. I just yeah, it does, like, when I see the guys posting about it, or you want to talk about it, you always get that like FOMO feeling. But then I like the first 2 episodes. I just don't like this idea of waiting for a narrative. We're watching Masked Dancer, those competition shows. That's one thing, because you get tired. I can't watch a competition show back to back to back, except Amazing Race on the CTV app. But for the like Mandalorian, if I had to wait a week to find out where Baby Yoda goes next, I don't know. It's frustrating.
Lose your mind.
Holy shit! It's a blizzard. What the fuck? It's a whiteout, dude.
Oh wow! Yeah, you're right. Where did that come from?
I don't know. Winter's like, you know what? You had a nice little break. Fuck you.
Yeah, we're gonna do it all in 1 week.
All right. What's up for you now?
I have another meeting at 3, but I'm going to respond to some emails and get a jump on next week's work.
Okay. Do you want anything to do with this podcasting group on Discord? Not particularly, I think.
What about it?
Are you going to get involved in it at all?
Oh, yeah. Like Alex already sent me the link. I just have to do it.
Okay. I sent them the Transistor page for our podcast.
Yeah.
Alex's new one, Broken Ball, is pretty good, actually. It's the first podcast I've listened to in probably 6 months, but I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, you know what we're doing still, Dave? We're still live streaming. So thanks everyone for seeing us doing all of our stupid shorts and stuff at the end, because I forgot to stop the live stream. So thanks everyone. This is going to be really awkward. Good thing we didn't.
Long. What's the recording time? Like 2 hours?
Yeah. It's a good thing we didn't talk shit about all those people we normally do in the after show. So
what will be really interesting is anyone actually watches it.
Oh,
because
no.
that's a 2-hour commitment.
Hey, comment below if you're actually here hearing me speak. You aren't, but if you are,